Live, local, late breaking. This is WBAL TV 11 News.
Well, coming up this morning, remembering the Battle of Antietam.
Yeah, we're going to talk with our celebrity historian about this Civil War battle that happened right here in our state, and we'll tell you why it's so significant.
Well, today marks the 161st anniversary of the Battle of Antietam, which took place right here in Maryland and remains one of the most famous battles of the Civil War. And joining us live this morning with more is celebrity historian Raffi Andonian. Good morning.
Good morning. And of course, the Battle of Antietam has sort of the celebrities of the Civil War. It has George McClellan, Abraham Lincoln is involved afterwards at some point. You have Clara Barton involved. You have Longstreet, Jackson, Lee. It's really kind of a cast.
Well, for those who weren't paying attention in American history or may have just taken it a long time ago, remind us about the Battle of Antietam and why it was so significant.
And why it's here in Maryland is important, too. It's part of the significance. It's because General Lee's Southern Army is coming up north. Now, remember, Maryland is a slave state, but does not leave the Union. So when Lee brings the army after a series of battles in Virginia up to Maryland, he's bringing the war north. It's fall of 1862. It's election season. That means he's trying to affect the midterm elections that are coming up and affect the Union morale against the war, right? So that they can kind of reduce the war effort. And he also has some hope, or at least some Confederates do, though Lee's kind of mixed on this, on helping sort of support Confederate sympathy in Maryland, because the eastern part of the state especially does have Confederate sympathy, heavier slaveholding, as opposed to the western part of the state where he ends up hanging out, which is much more strongly Unionist. So that military being here across a 1,000-mile front eventually leads to Battle of Antietam, Battle of South Mountain, which is on the anniversary, by the way, of Fort McHenry. Now, this weekend is Defenders Day. They're doing festivities there for that.
Yeah.
Now, of course, that's the anniversary from War of 1812, but interesting that the South Mountain battle takes place on the anniversary, you know, of the Fort McHenry, the home of the free, right? The land of the brave, or land of the free, home of the brave. But then the Battle of Antietam takes place, and the reason that's so significant is a few different things. Now let's look at the Constitution here for a second. I brought a copy.
We've got our historical documents here. Now, which paragraph am I reading here?
Well, you got to keep reading because we're going to get to the amendments. Now, what's interesting about that is the fact that, you know, when the Battle of Antietam happens, it's significant for many reasons. One, and most importantly, the Emancipation Proclamation. Now think about it. Abraham Lincoln issues the Emancipation Proclamation after the Battle of Antietam because Lee's efforts to take the war up north fail as a result of the Battle of Antietam. He's turned around and has to go back down south. So Lee sees that as Lincoln sees that as a strategic victory. When he sees it as a strategic victory, he issues the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, there has been some stuff on the home front with the Union that does support adding the freedom cause to the war. Remember, so far, the war was about Union. But now with the Emancipation Proclamation, it adds freedom, ending slavery as a part of the war aim. And the reason that's so important is because that, when it's added officially to the war aim, eventually, within a few years, by the end of the war, would change the Constitution and add the 13th Amendment to end slavery. And that doesn't happen without the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, the other thing that it does, it gives the Union the moral high ground. And when they have the moral high ground, it helps eliminate any hope that the Confederacy had of Great Britain recognizing them. And so Antietam is this huge ripple effect, ultimately, eventually, freeing 4 million people from enslavement. That's the impact of Antietam that took place right here in Maryland 161 years ago on September 17th. Oddly enough, on the anniversary of the Constitution in 1787. Did you realize that? So
I did not.
1787 is all.
I wasn't finished reading.
September 17th is also Constitution Day. And isn't that amazing that on the anniversary of the Constitution is when the Battle of Antietam takes place that later would transform the Constitution as a result of the Emancipation Proclamation, changing the Constitution to end slavery. And a few days prior, the Battle of South Mountain, which is part of the same Maryland campaign, was on the same anniversary as Battle of Fort McHenry, where we sing, of course, with, you know, land of the free, home of the brave. That's the power of Antietam that took place.
That's huge. And I always say every time you come that if you were my history teacher, no shade to my teachers, you guys were great. But I would have you just make it so fascinating and easy to understand. And really, I would have retained more of this information.
Well, I'll tell you another thing that's
huge.
It is huge. And it also helps change medicine. You know, so you think about.
In what way?
well, there is Letterman is his name. John Letterman. What he does is he's the head of the Union Medicine, and they were kind of having trouble handling battle wounded and dead in the battles preceding Antietam. And Antietam is the first time he transforms the way that they're able to handle wounded ambulatory services during the battle, and of course, you know, ordering and kind of prioritizing wounded, how they're going to treat them. Battle of Antietam is where that changes. He's known as a father of battlefield medicine. Battle of Antietam is where you see that. Don't forget Clara Barton is also present here. So transformative for medicine too. So large was it in memory that later on in the 1920s, United States Marines did a whole huge demonstration at the Battle of Antietam in order to help save funding for the Marines because they were up for being cut. And they said, we need to come to Antietam. And they did a demonstration. That's how powerful Antietam is. MLK refers to it at some point. And it remains today the bloodiest day in American history. 23,000 killed, wounded, and missing. To give you context, that's about half what we had in 15, 20 years in Iraq and Afghanistan in one day at the Battle of Antietam.
Oh my gosh, Raffi, we love when you come here. We need to just do an American history segment, just really talking about how instrumental so many battles that happened here in Maryland and here in the Mid-Atlantic region were to just really the shaping of this country.
We're still learning about it today too. This book just came out last month from Johns Hopkins University.
And it's a thick one, it's a read.
It is, it just came out. We're still discovering bodies on the battlefield and new maps.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for being here. We always love when you come.
Thank you.
Awesome.